My lying wife stabbed me in the back and my mother took her side. Years later, I made them regret everything. So recently, I caught my former alcoholic wife relapsing into alcoholism, and while she was asleep, I stumbled upon a text conversation between her and a close friend of mine. I found out she was having an affair, and although I didn't want to believe it at first, when it fully hit me what was happening, I left my home with the intention of ending my life. Luckily, I pulled myself together and instead simply stayed outside all night. Then came the next morning and my wife started bombarding my phone. Throughout the morning, I was getting multiple texts and phone calls from her, asking where I was and what the hell was up. As my work van was still sitting in the driveway and I was nowhere to be seen, I texted her back, telling her that there was a problem with the engine, so I got a lift into work, which she seemed to buy as she just texted back saying, okay, I actually went to my friend's house and spent the day with him, so he actually convinced me to try and keep a low profile and see what I could dig up, but at the same time, speak to a lawyer and get the ball rolling. In terms of finding out my options, he took me home about 6 miles and I was honestly dead on my feet by that point. I think the adrenaline pumping the entire day, then suddenly stopping knocks it right out of you, so I was extremely tired when I got home. The second I walked through the door, I knew something was up as my wife was on me right away asking me all sorts of questions about work. I asked her why she even cares. She said that I'd left my big flask and my lunch bag in the front passenger side seat, and something's been up today. She could feel it. I was about to spill everything, but I was just too tired. I couldn't be bothered putting any sort of charade up. I just said, yeah, there is something up, that when I was putting her alcoholic butt to bed last night, a message came up on her iWatch which I read, and all the other ones, and that she was a disgusting cheater that I wanted nothing more to do with. Her demeanor went from an arms-crossed person in power to a scared little girl. Within about a second, she started sobbing, and I just walked away and upstairs into the shower. When I got out, she was sitting on the top stair crying still, and the excuses started right away. How she was drunk, vulnerable, had never done anything like that before. How he had messaged her first and it didn't mean anything. She was never going to go through with it. Pretty much everything that everyone on here was saying, she would say like she had the playbook out. The only thing she didn't do was try and blame me. She probably knew I would have thrown her right out the door if she had tried that. I told her that I wanted a divorce and her out of the house within a month. Also told her that she was moving to the spare room. I've been pretty much ignoring her ever since, just scowling at her and shaking my head when she starts waffling. Nonsense. I don't want to hear it. I was telling my parents what was happening, and then what I really didn't expect happened. My mother sided with her and was adamant I wasn't throwing her out onto the streets. My mother was saying she made a mistake and that we should sort it out like adults, that we've been through too much together and that she didn't actually do anything. It was just words. She completely took her side over mine. Couldn't believe it. I managed to get myself an appointment with a divorce lawyer for next week, so I'll be going to that to discuss my options. Update. It's now been 20 days since I found out my wife was cheating on me with my friend, and the situation has become hellish. I gave her a month to get out and she's been sleeping in the spare room, but it's clear now she doesn't have any intention of going after she got in the ear of my mother. She doesn't have anywhere to go at any rate, but that's not my problem. I've seen my divorce lawyer multiple times and am now in the process of drawing up a divorce petition and having my wife serve divorce papers. I've also opened my own bank account and taken 50% of the balance from our shared account. The atmosphere around the house has been weird to say the least. The living room has turned into a no-man's land where no one frequents, as we both spend the majority of our times in our rooms. I had been completely ignoring to phone me a few days ago, and I just blanked her call and as said a bit further up since today have blocked her number. I feel so let down by my mother, and at this point it almost feels worse than the original betrayal from my wife. The way I'm feeling right now, I don't think I'll ever speak to her again. Update 3. It's been over 7 months since my wife first cheated, and I honestly thought that was it for me. But I got a phone call that has dragged me back into the mire. I have moved 15 miles away, changed my phone number, and am still in the process of divorcing my wife. She has completely ignored all the requests from my divorce lawyer to cooperate, which has hindered things. We're now in the process of putting in an application for deemed service and trying to have her served officially by the courts. If she continues to ignore me, then I can proceed with a divorce without her input. Well, while at work, I got a phone call from my best friend telling me that my dad was trying to get in touch as my mother is not well, and would it be okay if he gave him my number? I said okay, and my dad phoned to tell me mom is in hospital. She's stable, though not great, obviously. I was shocked as I've not heard my dad's voice for so long. It was also the most emotional I've ever heard him. He told me my mom really wants to see me. So would I meet him at the hospital and go in and see her with him? I said okay, and I arranged to meet him outside the hospital. When the time to leave my house and go visit her approached, I was genuinely about to back out at the last minute. But I knew I needed some closure and knew that I wouldn't forgive myself if I didn't go. And something happened. When I drove into the hospital car park, I had this surreal feeling of paranoia and was half expecting my wife to jump out from behind a bush or something. I met my dad at the entrance and it was pretty awkward as he tried to hug me and I said no. I then said, if my wife is here in any way, shape or form, then I am about turning and out the door. He assured me she wasn't and we made our way to the ward where Mom was. When I saw my mother, I got the fright of my life as she looked like she had been in the wars. Never have I seen her look so frail. She's got an extreme black eye, also a lot of bruising and purple yellowness down one side of her face. She took a serious fall, broke 2 ribs, shattered her elbow, and banged one side of her head. Face on the ground. She looked zombified, but perked up when she saw me. She told me how much she's missed me and that she wasn't sure she'd ever see me again. I told her if she had really wanted to get a hold of me, she could have done it. We spoke for a bit about what exactly had happened and how she was down for a few hours before my dad found her. Also, that she was determined to get back to normal and mend bridges with me. I brought up my wife and that I had been pushing for a divorce, but she was either ignoring the letters or wasn't getting them. So I asked if she's still in the house. Mom admitted she was and Dad started to look uncomfortable. I just looked away in disgust. Mom started saying how lost my wife is without me and that she's not in a good way. I knew then that nothing will change. She's not had an epiphany or seeing things from a new perspective. She just wants the status quo back. She said that the house is my home and always will be, but I told her I don't want it. It means nothing to me anymore and all it holds are bad memories. I stayed for under an hour. All in all, when I left, I said if I want to get in contact, I will, but don't be waiting over the phone for me to call as you might be waiting a while. When Dad walked me out, he asked if I would keep in touch with him and I said I would. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. Time will tell. When I got home, my emotions were a bit all over the place, from sadness to anger, but I'm glad I went. Couldn't help think about my wife as well and what she once meant to me. It'll never not hurt. Update 4. I'm now in the home stretch in terms of divorce from my wife. She has signed the divorce papers and sent them to my divorce lawyer. So all that's left now are the formalities. She sent me a message via my dad where she said she's sorry for not letting me move on, that she thought she could save things, but now she knows she can't, and she has to move on for her own well-being. I thank her for seeing sense she doesn't want anything in the divorce, and said she's going to move out of the house when she can get on her feet. Which I'm okay with in terms of my mother. I haven't spoken to her yet, but my dad said she's doing a lot better after getting out of the hospital and getting some normality back. I don't know how things will pan out with them. But I've said that if the house is going to be mine, then I want them to put it into my name now to give me some security. Then we can start trying to build bridges. We'll see how that goes. I have started therapy and spoken to a psychiatrist both over the phone and in person, and it has helped me a lot to speak candidly about everything, if only for a little while. My psychiatrist also said something to me that really struck a chord when I was moaning about how my best years were behind me. She said, "Your best years are the years you've got left." What I think she meant is the past is gone. It doesn't exist except in your mind, but the here and now does, and you can choose to make the most of it, or live in a past that isn't real to anyone but you. It's definitely a phrase I'm going to try and remember when I feel down. Update 5. First things first, I'm now officially divorced. Feels like a weight has been lifted, but also a firm end to what was nearly a third of my life. I actually saw my ex-wife for the first time in almost a year, as I was walking into a shop in the town center. About a month back, after visiting a friend, she was opening the door to walk out. Just as I was walking in, we made eye contact. She mumbled something that I couldn't make out. Then we just sort of stared at each other for a few seconds. Then I walked inside. As I was walking around the shop, this feeling of utter sadness just enveloped me, and I had to take a minute to compose myself. It just goes to show all it takes is one look for you to feel straight back to square one. Do I miss her? No, I miss the person I thought she was, but that person doesn't exist anymore. If she ever did. I don't wish her hurt or hardship though. I really don't. I just refuse to move forward any longer with hatred in my heart. The only person it'll burden in the long run is me. I also found out from my friend's girlfriend that she was sure she saw my ex-wife outside a pub in the city, all over another guy a couple of years back while we were still together. Apparently she never said anything to me because she wasn't sure it was her, and she didn't want to meddle. Something else that is really important is that I'm struggling when it comes to my parents, in that all I feel towards them is complete apathy. I'm just having a difficult time feeling anything, and no matter how hard I try, I don't think that'll change. My dad has tried to build back the relationship again, but I just don't care anymore. That might sound harsh, but it's the truth. And by far the most important thing that happened was that I almost died. Literally. You see, at the start of the year, I had a really scary experience when I cut the back of my trouser leg on a metal bin while brushing against it at work. I never realized it had caused a cut until I went home, and when I went to bed at night, I felt kind of weird. I woke up about 2 a.m. and my leg was pulsating. I felt deathly ill, was seeing double dizzy, and was alternating between a severe fever and chills. I understood right away it could be sepsis, so I phoned an ambulance and my thoughts were doing light speed laps around my head while I was hyperventilating like crazy. Do you know the only thing that calmed me down when I was freaking the F out? I accepted that I was possibly going to die. And then for some reason, I just didn't feel afraid anymore. I don't know if it was the whole accepting fate state of mind, but when I accepted that it might be over, it took all the permutations out of the equation and everything became very simple and calm. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and when I think about cheating car betrayal, I feel very similar. You have to accept that what you had is over. It's long gone. If someone is willing to plunder such depth and stab you in the back so mercilessly for their own gratification, fighting that unwinnable battle is noble and all. But when you're peeing into the wind with lottery odds of success, is it worth it? Is it worth the pain? I don't think so. It's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything. Tyler Durden.